thank you so much for that wonderful opening, because again, you've laid the groundwork for a lot of great questions and interesting conversation. Um, you mentioned the Me Too movement, and you and I had some conversation about this prior to, and there being, there's a lot of reporting that men definitely felt uncomfortable engaging in mentoring relationships with women at that point, which is a bad thing, right? It's a really bad thing. Um, but you shared that the research actually showed that prior to Me Too, that men had this hesitancy to do this. Can you speak a little bit on that?
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, interestingly, we were doing the research for Athena Rising. So this is in 2014, 2015. So prior to the 2017 Me Too really garnering lots of attention, we heard from so many men in the interviews we did for Athena Rising about all the reasons that men were reluctant to engage in professional developmental relationships in the workplace. And there were actually so many of them. We named it in the book. There's a section in the book called Reluctant Male Syndrome. Making a little fun of it, but at the same time, it's real and it existed, before Me Too. And this is everything from how, in particular, men, how often we look at women maybe a little bit differently in terms of who they are as leaders. So our perception of them is different, that maybe she's not strong enough, or she's not really leader material, or that she's a risky investment because I think she's this, one guy said, ticking time bomb of maternity. She's just going to start popping out babies suddenly and I'm going to lose her.
Yeah.
And so why should I invest all this time in her? And they had this perception. Other guys told us that, nah, I'm just kind of anxious about, I'm not really sure, what does that look like? What's the script I follow to have a professional relationship with a woman in the workplace who's, it's intimate, but it's at the same time, it's non-sexual, right? So what does that look like? It's like, I have family members. I know what it looks like to have a relationship with my mom, with my wife, my sister, if you have a daughter, but I don't know what that looks like. And so guys got uncomfortable. And the minute that you get uncomfortable, what do? Naturally, as humans, we avoid it, right? That's discomfort. Just go get away from it. But and of course, there's the issue of perceptions too around how are people going to see us. If I'm in a professional relationship with a woman, starts suddenly spending lots of time with this particular, maybe a junior woman, maybe younger, what will people say? What will my colleagues say? Will they have something to talk about? And then some men even said that they were concerned about what their partner, their spouse would say, about, again, spending lots of time with this junior person. So there were lots of these reasons already out there before Me Too even hit.
Well, I think the perceptions and the thoughts that people have in their head are powerful, right? Like it doesn't even have to be in like intentionally, overtly trying to hurt someone, but because they may have these thoughts in their head, they are inadvertently hurting people because they're not allowing opportunity. It actually make me think of this. I once had a program dealing with Latinos, and I went and spoke to a leader about, how do we get more Latinos hired into your organization? And the response was, I don't have any problem with hiring more Latinos, but how can they do the job if they can't speak English? It was like, what? The perception in his head was that Latinos don't speak English, right? And so that, again, he wasn't trying to be, from the externally, what I can see and what I could talk to him, he wasn't trying to be mean. He honestly just didn't know. And he really thought that. So, these perceptions are important. So I guess how do you, what does that mean for men? Like how do you go about identifying these blind spots, right? If they actually believe these things, how do they identify these blind spots and then change that way of thinking?
Yeah, and that's a great question, Alex. There's not one single answer to that. It really kind of depends on. So if it's the perceptions issue in particular, so this speaks to implicit associations or unconscious biases. A lot of people are becoming a lot more familiar with these days, and really understanding what that is and developing an awareness and an understanding of how that plays out. So, for example, these can also be thought about, you can think about it as assumptions we make about other people. So from a gender perspective, if I have a woman who works with me and there's this great opportunity coming up, but I go, wow, but it's got a lot of travel, and she's just had a baby, and it's probably not the right thing for her. So I'm not even gonna bother her with it, because it's probably not a good fit for her. And I'm gonna help her. And this gets into this overlap into kind of this rescuing mode a little bit too, right? Because now I'm in this benevolent mode of doing what's best for her. And I've actually just taken away all of her decision-making power, right? And not let her choose and make that decision for herself. And there's all of these different kinds of assumptions that we make about different people. Again, we're removing that power to choose, that power to make their own decision in doing that. And in many cases, these assumptions just aren't valid, right? They might be in some cases, they might not be in others, right? But if we give people the opportunity just to make their own decisions, then I think that's one way to do it. But the solution, wow, so developing awareness and understanding is one part of it. The other part, I think, around relationships in particular, this discomfort piece is, if the clinical psychologist was here, Brad, he would tell you that it's exposure therapy. It's not less interaction, it's more interaction, right? So now you got to go have more coffees, more lunches, more Zoom meetings, more opportunities where you're spending time together. And as we spend more time together, we get to build connection, right? And then we begin to develop empathy, right? And the minute you start down that path, this is, in psychology, this is well known as the mere exposure effect, right? That we begin to build a kindness, a liking, right? An enjoying about being a colleague with someone at that point. And all those barriers come down. And then the curiosity comes up. And then curiosity happens, we can ask questions. And now I can ask you about your experiences, and I can get, hey, I can get feedback on how am I doing at the same time, and get, now we're in a dialogue. And so we start to break down those barriers.
So I'm hearing ask at the bare baseline, fundamental, ask questions. I guess the assumptions makes an ass out of you and me, right?
Yep.
So being willing to ask those questions, and again, because I feel safe with you right now, so I'm going to ask you some questions. What if you don't have the right words, right? And you feel like you're trying to ask the right questions, but you get yourself in trouble because it's not framed right. Like how do you deal with that?
Hello, everyone. This is Alex Tremble from GPS Leadership Solutions. And if you found this last interview to be awesome, spectacular, and actually you benefited from it, let me tell you, this is only the tip of the iceberg. Visit the alextrembleshow.com, information below in the description, and that's where you'll find the full uninterrupted interview. And I'm telling you, there's so much great content you'll hear from this past leader, as well as all the other leaders we've already interviewed. So remember, don't just look back, reach back. If there's someone who you think will benefit from this interview or any of the other interviews, make sure you share it with them. Click the like, click the subscribe, and as I always will be in all my sessions, stay strong, stay positive, and definitely stay moving.